Hey everybody, welcome back to Kayfabe Critique. I'm David.
I'm Jason. What's up, y'all?
And we are on the road to WrestleMania. Last week we talked about Becky Lynch. Tonight we're going to talk about another person involved in that main event, in the triple threat match. The baddest woman on the planet, Ronda Rousey.
Yeah, we're doing a couple tonight, but we started with her because we was afraid that she might come through out of nowhere if we didn't start with her. We still kind of scared because we started with Becky last week, but hey, she's the man, so we'll take our chances.
So Jason, when's the first time you remember hearing about Ronda Rousey?
First time I remember hearing about Ronda Rousey, I think I can remember the first time I actually watched one of her fights. I remember that better. I was getting them together. We were having a reunion with some of my friends from Belvedere School. Shout out to Belvedere back in Omaha, elementary reunion. We were at Dave and Buster's, and it's like everybody's talking about this Ronda Rousey fight, and they're gonna have the fight on. So I'm like, I was just sticking around and watch it, and I see her opponent come to the ring. I'm like, okay. And then I see this woman. Then I see this woman walking towards the ring with just an intensity that I haven't seen in anyone since Mike Tyson. And she's walking fast, and some people will be able to relate to this. Like, she had that type of walk that you see your parents, or I've seen other parents have, because it didn't happen to me because I had stayed out of trouble for the most part. When you're about to get that ass whooped, and the fight lasted, 20 seconds, if that? So that was my first memory of her. I was like, oh.
Yeah, I was kind of the same. Like, I'd been a UFC fan for a long time, back before it even became organized, like during the early days. I remember renting the videos as they'd come available to watch, Gracie and Shamrock. And so just kind of been a fan to that time, so way before the Ultimate Fighter and the explosion, the popularity of MMA. But yeah, I just remember her when she came to the UFC, which I didn't watch Strikeforce, so I didn't know who she was prior to. But when she came to the UFC and just kind of the buzz around her, being the first woman in the UFC, and I just remember watching her and just destroying people.
Yeah.
And I remember having the same feeling, she reminded me of a young Tyson, where Tyson just walked through people. She had that same thing, and she had that, when she was walking to the octagon, that look on her face as she was there to destroy someone.
Yeah, the fight was basically over at that point. If you made eye contact with her and the look that she had on her face, it's just scary. It's just bad intentions.
And so she was another level athlete.
Yeah.
In a true combat sport.
Mm-hmm.
And now she's moved into the WWE. She is the Raw Women's Champion.
Mm-hmm.
Going into the hottest angle, going in towards WrestleMania, going for the main event, with the triple threat match with Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair. And she's having a very unique build to this match, something that personally I haven't really seen done in wrestling before.
It's a hybrid type of thing. Making use of social media, the first time we really saw somebody making use of social media like she is with the Rock Cena feud. Mm-hmm. And that was creative at the time, but Ronda's taking it to another level. It's like, she is, I don't know, she's turning the volume way up, and calling fans marks, and it's like there's some real pent up feelings coming out in what she's saying, it feels like.
And what I'm enjoying about it is it's believable.
Yeah.
She, as we talked about, she is truly a fighting machine. And, for her to point out things like that, if this was real, I would break Becky's arm off.
Right.
And that's real. And so, that has me intrigued of, where's this going to go?
I like the direction it's going. I like the way that WWE is weaving so much reality into the storylines, and it's like, you can feel like some realism. We were talking before we went on the air about the Triple H Batista thing. There is so much, or maybe I was just thinking about that on the way here. It's like, that's real. I mean, and people want stuff that's real, and you can really feel. I mean, you can really feel tension in that whole triple threat match between all three of them. And Ronda's just being herself right now, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think she's bringing that UFC persona more out into the camera. Where initially in WWE she was brought in as the smiling, happy competitor. Now we're getting to see that vicious side that the UFC fans have known.
Yeah, some people just don't like to be baby faces. Austin didn't like to be a baby face.
Flair
hated being a baby face. Batista said he hates being a baby face. I mean, when you're the heel, you can basically say whatever the hell you want. I mean, and I've always heard like Austin say, most people who get over are just being themselves with the volume turned way up. And look at what's happening right now.
Yeah, so let's kind of backtrack. Let's talk about how we got to where we are. So, Ronda Rousey, she was born in Riverside, California, February 1st, 1987, the youngest of 3 daughters. What I wasn't aware of was that her mother was a decorated judoka. And she was the first American to win the World Judo Championship in 1984.
Did not know that.
Yeah, so so she has that pedigree in her background. Her mother was an athlete, which I definitely was not aware of.
Had no idea.
Which I did know about, when she, the first 6 years of her life, she had a speech issue where she wasn't able to. It was kind of like a neurological issue because she was born with the umbilical cord wrapped around her neck.
Ooh.
And so she really wasn't able to formulate sentences for the first 6 years. So, kind of had that rougher side of her childhood. But then, she was able to overcome that. Mm-hmm. And so then she began, training with judo with her mother. Mm-hmm. And eventually ends up accidentally breaking her mother's wrist.
Was it an accident?
So she breaks her mother's wrist. And then, so she starts getting, trained at a different level. And then, in 2004, she's now, she wins the gold medal at the World Junior Judo Championships. In April of 2006, she became the first female U.S. judoka in nearly 10 years to win an A-level tournament. So she won the Birmingham World Cup. Later that year, so she's 19 years old at this point, and later that year she won the bronze medal at the Junior World Championships, which she was the first USA athlete to win 2 junior world medals.
I mean, it sounds like she had an amazing climb. I mean, like you said, it's in her blood, and when you grow up like that, I can imagine like with her having the speech issue, kids being unkind. I can imagine that some of that, just trying to find a way to deal with that. Probably came out when she was fighting. Because you ain't got to talk when you're fighting.
Yeah. And in 2007, she wins the world. She gets the silver medal in the World Judo Championships. In 2008, she went into the Olympics in Beijing, and so she ends up becoming the bronze medal winner in the Olympics.
I didn't know she was at that Olympics. Main thing I remember for that Olympics is the basketball, and some of like the Greco-Roman wrestling, but I didn't remember hearing about her.
So very successful judo career, and at the age of 21, she retires from judo, and she starts learning about MMA. And so initially she starts off amateur in MMA, but we start to see kind of that, what we had talked about, that destroyer coming forward as she wins her first amateur fight in just 23 seconds. And she goes on to continue to win fights. Like she wins another one, just 57 seconds, wins another one in 24 seconds, wins another one in under 2 minutes, she turns pro at King of the Cage in 2011, and her first pro fight she wins with armbar in just 25 seconds.
what I wonder about with UFC, and I've talked to some people who have done MMA, and I've actually fought MMA. I wonder how much of her judo actually translated. I would imagine a lot of it would translate into MMA. So
Yeah,
it was kind
process.
of a natural transition, and then you combine that with just that mentality that she seems to have. It's like a fish swimming in water, basically.
Yeah. And when, you're going back to the childhood of just say the will to overcome.
Right.
And just this, as you can see, this just natural fire in an athlete, the willingness to learn, the willingness to train, the willingness to build and adapt.
Mm-hmm.
And here she is just out there killing it and picking this up, And so by 2011, after she's making her pro debut in MMA doing well, she moves into Strikeforce. And, so during obviously very successful in Strikeforce, and doesn't take long until she wins the women's bantamweight championship in Strikeforce. And so by 2012, so just a year later, Dana White is announcing that Ronda Rousey had become the first female fighter to sign with the UFC.
Props to Dana White. He's a businessman, and he's a businessman that I have a lot of respect for. The way UFC has blown up from, like you said, the days of like going to Blockbuster. That's like the third or fourth time I've heard somebody mention Blockbuster in the last few weeks. I mean, including seeing Captain Marvel and getting the tapes and stuff like that. And now, I mean, he's taking it from that to like the pay-per-views or events. They got this ESPN deal, and I believe a lot of that. Ronda Rousey had a lot to do with that.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely one of the faces that helped pull people in and draw people into the UFC. I mean, she became such a big star in the UFC. I mean, think about the ESPN Body Issue magazine, where, she was one of the people featured. And I remember seeing that picture of her, just the hand wraps on, but her arms conveniently placed to cover.
I think I still have that one somewhere.
Yeah, I had that picture on my phone for a while. But it was one of those things where it's like, not only did I know she, was a legit badass, but then I saw that picture and I was like,
Yeah, because I mean, you see this legit badass, and I mean, you think like, okay, if I'm dating her and I leave the seat up, that's my ass. I mean, you start to see this other side of her, and I've seen her on I would see her on like Sports Center and stuff like that. I mean, she really started to cross over.
Yeah, and so, what I thought was interesting is, here's around the time where you start to see, at least to my knowledge, the first tie into wrestling. When they tried to give her at that time the nickname Rowdy. And she actually doesn't want to do it because she feels it would be disrespectful to Roddy Piper. Yeah,
and I mean, when you think about wrestling and MMA and UFC and WWE, you think, to some people, there's like an animosity or something like that. But we were in Phoenix at WrestleMania watching UFC with Matt Hardy. We're not just name dropping here. This actually happened. Matt Hardy, Evan Bourne, other people. We're sitting there watching UFC. So these guys are fans. So, and vice versa. So like, people grew up watching Roddy Piper and they respect Roddy Piper. So even though wrestling is a work, as Ronda's been pointing out so much recently, she still respected Roddy Piper because of everything that he had accomplished. And she didn't want to disrespect that name.
Yeah, and so that was the first knowledge that I had of her being tied into wrestling. And, we won't really see anything about that for a while, but because she starts to just destroy people in the UFC, like we were talking about at the start of the show, just taking people out with that vicious armbar. I mean, it's the part, if you haven't seen what we're talking about, you can go to YouTube, look up Ronda Rousey highlights, UFC highlights, and just watch some of those arm bars that she would snap on people.
Watch the arm bars and just watch her come into the ring. Walking with purpose.
Yeah, definitely. Kind of like go back to the custom auto days with Mike Tyson, that training had, and you would hear Kevin Rooney in the early 80s fights tell him, go out there with bad intentions, throw punches with bad intentions.
Right.
And you could see that in Ronda Rousey's face.
Right. She's not out there to put on a show. She's out there to hurt somebody.
So similar to Tyson, all her quick victories, the quick just destruction of her opponents, the complete domination of her opponents, leads her to be that giant UFC star.
Mm-hmm. I mean, overshadowing everyone. She was, the face of the UFC. I mean, overshadowing every guy, just overshadowing everybody. And
so similar to WWE with the Women's Revolution, where eventually you have a women's match main eventing. Mm-hmm. She has the same thing in UFC.
That might have been the first. I don't know if it was. She main evented the one I saw the first time I saw her fight. She was the last fight of the night. She was the one that everybody wanted to see.
Yeah, and so she got so big that she was headlining UFC, becoming that superstar. Of course, we won't spend a lot of time on this. I know we spent a lot of time on her UFC background already, mixed martial arts and judo, but she ends up losing.
Yeah,
her title, which was really hard for her to overcome.
Yeah.
She tries to make a comeback fight, doesn't work. She gets beat again, and so she kind of disappears for a minute. But the WWE was waiting in the wings for this.
Just waiting, and I don't know when exactly we're gonna get there, but I love the way that they kind of. I mean, I remember her being. Was it SummerSlam?
2014.
2014. She was there with the 4 Horsewomen, and then a few months later, she's at WrestleMania, and I remember that because my boy The Rock. I mean, Stephanie slaps him, and The Rock's not gonna hit a woman, but
yeah, because she even taunts him with that, like, you won't hit a woman, so why don't you just go ahead and get out of here?
Right, and he wouldn't. I mean, even though he'd given her the rock bottom in 2000, but in 2015, you can't do that.
Yeah, so he steps out of the ring, and it's like, well, he can't hit a woman, but here's someone who.
Then he takes a turn, and then you see Ronda Rousey just like, oh, it's about to go down.
I mean, so that was a good way to, put her in front of a WWE crowd and see how they react to her getting in the ring. And huge pop.
Huge pop.
And you knew right then that, okay, here's something that she can do.
Yeah.
And with that UFC background, we saw with, Brock Lesnar, that you can make her a WWE star.
Oh, without a doubt.
And so she, comes in the 2018 Royal Rumble. You have the Women's Royal Rumble match going on. After the match is over, with Asuka as the winner, you have both Alexa and Charlotte there. And so as you're getting ready to see what happens, all of a sudden Ronda Rousey's music hits. Crowd goes crazy. She steps in the ring and points to the WrestleMania sign. And she is now officially in the WWE. And it makes headlines across the board. It gets that mainstream sports news coverage.
Yeah, and that's another thing that WWE has done well throughout the last few years. They've really gotten a lot of just exposure on like ESPN.com. They have a section now that can you imagine that in 2001, WWE having a section of their own on ESPN.com?
Right.
I mean, I think that they've leveraged some things with between Coachman being there and other relationships. They have. I mean, that's just been something I've been very impressed with. And when you sign the baddest woman on the planet, I mean, granted, she's still. I mean, so what? She lost a few fights. She's still the baddest woman on the planet to me. I mean, I'm not going to tell her she's not. Are you?
Right, and UFC is MMA, UFC in general. So MMA is a sport that evolves so fast. I mean, we've seen guys, that are great. Randy Couture, Chuck Liddell, Tito Ortiz, Anderson Silva. You become old fast in MMA.
Yeah.
And especially when UFC is the pinnacle of MMA. It's the top. It's the best. It's like an all-star.
it is a combat sport, and I mean, you get knocked out, it's gonna have a psychological effect on you, just like in boxing, it's gonna have an effect on you.
Right, and so, nothing changes from what she accomplished in UFC.
Without a doubt.
She was a judo champion, Olympic medalist in judo, a world champion in judo, a world champion in UFC. So coming into the WWE, it's logical. She will be the women's champion.
Oh, you knew it was coming. It's just they didn't want to do it. I mean, you don't do it too soon. I mean, they're smart about how they bring her in. I mean, who do they have? Who do they bring her in, and who do they involve her with? I mean, somebody who can make her look good. And I mean, Stephanie and Triple H, they made her look good, and they teamed her up with another Olympic medalist, someone who won an Olympic gold medal with a broken freaking neck, and Kurt Angle. And I just love I love the way they brought that all together.
And what's interesting is, early on her drive to the championship, and we saw it initially here with the, building up to the WrestleMania match against Triple H and Stephanie. They had her put Triple H through the table, and so you can kind of back her away from TV for a minute.
Yeah.
Because, think about it, to me personally, you're in a rough spot to kind of book her initially.
Yeah.
Because we know she's been this dominant fighter.
Right.
So she's in a Brock Lesnar type role where, Brock is a destroyer, Brock is a destructor, Brock's the beast, but they don't have Brock there every night.
Right.
So you don't have to worry about overexposing this dominant fighter or putting this dominant fighter in a spot where are we going to let anyone get the best of them? So it felt like initially, before she could get the title, they were trying to strategically, have her on TV and kind of pull her back.
Right.
Not to do that. But of course she was filming a movie also, around this time. So let's kind of walk through some stuff real quick and then we'll get back to that. So, after she has her in-ring debut, WrestleMania 34, she goes on, it finds out that she gets challenged by then champion Nia Jax. Goes into Money in the Bank, and Alexa Bliss wins the Money in the Bank match and comes out and interferes in the match and then cashes in her briefcase to get the championship from Nia. And so Ronda, who was on the verge of beating Nia Jax, now has the natural still going after the championship and against the person who cost her the championship, Alexa Bliss.
It made a lot of sense. I mean, and it made sense for them not to give her the title like right away. I mean, there has to be a little bit of a chase. And the match that she had with Nia Jax, I mean, whoa. I mean, she sold for Nia. She made Nia look good and vice versa. I mean, it worked. And I think that Alexa doing what she did was perfect heel move.
Yeah, and it was a way to, protect both Nia and Ronda and then putting the belt on Alexa, which the storyline of Alexa and Ronda was going to be the big story moving into SummerSlam.
Yeah, and as much as I hated seeing Alexa get hurt, I mean, hey, it's the game.
Yeah, what I thought was interesting is you try to show that here early on they try to show a bit of not being able to control Ronda Rousey leading into the match where they have to suspend her because, she goes after Alexa and then, even won't let an official stop her.
Right.
As she's trying to beat Alexa to get revenge. So she gets suspended and basically told if she serves her suspension, she gets that championship match against Alexa Bliss at SummerSlam.
Yeah, and I mean, she's the baddest woman on the planet. It's like, you can't control that beast. I mean, you can't control her. I mean, you got to calm her down, and then you get your money match, and everybody's happy.
And then she goes on and beats Alexa Bliss in back-to-back matches at SummerSlam and then in Hell in a Cell, beating Alexa Bliss in both matches, and she is the women's championship and has successfully defended it
ever since.
Yeah, and so, and the reign just keeps going from there. She then ends up beating, Nikki Bella. She, and as we lead towards Survivor Series, that's when we were originally going to get Becky Lynch, who you can go back and watch our Becky Lynch episode and come up to this point where we were at with Becky Lynch. But Becky Lynch is now on fire coming into SummerSlam. Coming into Survivor Series. So she's on fire. She has the momentum behind her, the crowds behind her. She invades Monday Night Raw and attacks Ronda Rousey in the dressing room. We know Becky ends up getting in the ring. Nia Jax lands that right hand that legit breaks her nose. And so Becky Lynch is going to be out. So we're not going to get that Survivor Series matchup. We're not going to get to see Becky versus Ronda Rousey then. Instead, we get Ronda Rousey versus Charlotte Flair.
Which, I mean, if you don't get if you don't get Becky versus Ronda at Survivor Series, I don't know if you could. I mean, I don't know if you consider it the next best thing, or possibly even better if you get Charlotte Flair versus Ronda Rousey. I mean, you got the Flair name. I mean, Charlotte Flair is. I mean, granted, she's not a judo athlete. She's a legit athlete. I mean, like Division I volleyball. I mean, look at the things that she does in the ring. I mean, she can go. And then you got Ronda Rousey. I mean, that match delivered.
Yeah, absolutely. That match to me was the best match on Survivor Series.
Yes.
Ronda versus Charlotte stole the show, and it left you at that point wanting to see the two of them go again.
Yeah.
But yet you still had this urge. You had to see Ronda versus Becky.
Yeah.
And so I remember watching at that time, and I was like, man, this just opens the door for a triple threat.
Yeah.
And you have a great time, building towards that even more as you get to TLC, Becky versus Charlotte, and Asuka in there as well in the ladder match. Ronda Rousey comes out with Becky and Charlotte on the ladder, tips the ladder over. Asuka wins the SmackDown Women's Championship, and so leaves both Becky and Charlotte still with reasons to go after Ronda Rousey.
Right.
And so I did skip over at the end of the Survivor Series match where Charlotte reverted back to being a heel. She had been a face for a while. Kind of hard to accept her as a face. She's just so good as a heel.
Yeah.
And the way she just naturally moved into that aggressive heel mark at the end of
her daddy.
Yeah, and just went into that, So, now this comes through at TLC. We come to the Royal Rumble. And, the Royal Rumble comes down to, the Women's Rumble comes down to Becky and Charlotte.
Yep.
We know Becky's going to win, lay down the challenge that she wants to fight Ronda Rousey. And of course we've covered all the stuff that happens with Becky Lynch through this point. And as we talked about in our Becky episode, leading into Fastlane, you have Charlotte versus Becky. And we had talked about last week that would Ronda Rousey interfere to guarantee Becky was put in the match. And that's exactly what happened. So, we're definitely on the road to the hottest angle in all of wrestling right now. So the triple threat match.
All of wrestling.
The man Becky Lynch, the queen Charlotte Flair, and the baddest woman on the planet, Ronda Rousey. What's your thoughts on this match before it happens?
Whew. Well, I'm glad it's going on last, and this match, of all the championships that are going to be decided at Mania, this is the one that matters to me the most.
I agree. I think the storyline is compelling, and it has to go on last. It's the most intriguing storyline. Every time Ronda has gotten in the ring, she's gotten better and better and better.
Oh, easily.
Becky's character, the crowd's loving it right now. And Charlotte is another one that when she gets in the ring, she can steal the show. So between the three of them, I don't know if there's another match that could follow this. It has to be the one to close the show.
There's not. I mean, there is no other match. I was gonna say Triple H Batista could follow it, but no, it can't. I mean, granted, Triple H and Batista, they have the history, I mean, the evolution. Batista's big time in Hollywood and stuff like that. But this match has been building since. This match has just been building, and once you get to that match at Mania, I mean, that would be like, I mean, I don't want to call it the pinnacle of the women's evolution because I feel like they still got some things. There's still more that can happen, but you're not going to be able to. You can't follow that.
Yeah, and I mean, you're talking, a match that people have been anticipating for 5 months now. Mm-hmm. And so there's not a single other match on the Mania card that has been building for 5 months or that has had 5 months of anticipation towards it. And it's definitely the hottest storyline. And with Becky's character being so hot, we got to see, where Ronda came out on Raw, a little while back, and the crowd just would not stop chanting Becky's name. And so it seemed like, she was a little flustered. She didn't know how to handle it initially, but then she ends up, cutting that promo on Becky, pointing out that everyone here knows I could rip your arm off. And that moment right there, I think that's when it hit of, we just got to turn her into who she is. She is the legit badass. She's a legit destroyer. Let's run with it.
Yeah. Let Ronda be Ronda, and I mean, just let all three of these women be who they really are. I mean, Charlotte, when she walks in the room, she knows she's like it. Becky, I mean, to call herself a man, that takes some chutzpah, if you will. Ronda, I mean, we know her track record. I mean, you got three people who all feel like that when they walk in the room, they're the baddest thing in the room. Let them figure it out.
Yeah, and I love that this new attitude we're seeing from Ronda because, let's be honest, if this was real, she would break both of their arms.
Easily.
Yeah, I mean, neither one of them would be able to compete with her if this was real.
Right.
And so for her to start taking this approach and, like we talked about at the start of the show that Rob was saying, things are differently, is we've seen, shoot interviews before. Mm-hmm. We've seen try to do reality-based storylines. We know that it's been successful in the past. But we've never seen, at least I have never seen, and if there's someone out there that there's been an angle about this before, please, message us, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, anything, let us know. But I've never seen a superstar point out this isn't real. And if it was, I would destroy these people.
I think she's tapping into what a lot of people, like a lot of UFC fighters have said through the years that, I mean, a lot of UFC fans or people who don't like WWE, it's like, she's just saying what a lot of people have really thought. I mean, and we all know it's true. I mean, she's not saying anything we don't know, but it's the first time it's really been said that, like, in your face, and by such a credible resource.
Right, and so, it starts, this new approach and this new, calling it like it is, if you will, starts on social media. Mm-hmm. And, she has the post where she calls out Becky Lynch's armbar and basically says that, that's not a real armbar. You're not doing it right. If that, anyone who knows fighting knows that it doesn't hurt. And you're just, kind of playing off, Becky calling herself the man, kind of throws out there, it just looks like you're holding the dick you wish you had.
And if I was Becky, I'm speaking as Becky now, Ronda, don't come get me. I would ask, then why'd you sell it when I attacked you in the locker room like it hurt?
Yeah, and so it was just interesting, like, Ronda, like, taking this approach on social media, is different. It's very different. It's definitely not PG.
Yeah, it's definitely not PG because you can't control you can't control people's Twitter feeds. I mean, maybe you're moving. I mean, you can say things on social media that you can't say on any other platform. So basically, she's just like, I could let loose because we're not on USA Network, and we're not in a PG environment. What they gonna do?
Yeah, and so I just wanted to go back and try to find, some of these things to make sure I'm not missing anything that that she's laid out on social media. So, she, most recent one on Instagram, Becky's a joke, Charlotte's a joke, anyone who believes in this whole charade is a joke.
Well, I'm not the one to argue with Ronda.
Yeah. Her previous post before that kind of plays into what Triple H said, where Becky purposely sabotages herself so she won't be exposed. Which is kind of, similar to, when everyone thought that Tyson went after Lewis in the press conference to keep the fight from happening because he knew Lennox Lewis would beat him. Her 2 posts ago on Instagram, no, Becky, I wasn't going to let you throw the match against Charlotte so you could try to save face, blame your knee injury, and evade my wrath at WrestleMania. No one's ever escaped Charlotte's figure 8. The WWE Universe should be thanking me, getting Charlotte disqualified and sparing them from hearing your woe is me bullshit for the next year. And probably the most famous, you kind of alluded to earlier, her tirade that people are calling it, where she really, at that moment, really started pushing the boundaries of this isn't real. So what were your thoughts on that?
I just thought, again, she's saying what so many anti-WWE fans have said for years, that if this was real, that she would just go in there and just destroy people. She's kind of saying, I'm just playing with y'all. I mean, if I really wanted to, I could do whatever the hell. I could end y'all, but I'm really here I'm getting this money.
Yeah, and so you had, initially when Ronda dropped kind of the word fake, Becky came out and said, keep that F word out of your mouth and concentrate on getting better at this business instead of trying to remain above it. Looking forward to seeing you real soon. To which Ronda Rousey responded, F word, you mean fake? Flake like your nonsensical BS armbar that doesn't even work and just looks like you're holding the dick you wish you had. That's the one that when I saw that one, it was like, okay, they're going a much different path. And Eric Bischoff pointed that out, saying, he commented on, I believe it was Twitter, he made the comment, pointing out that, they live in the PG environment, so they're not able to be as edgy as they were in the Attitude Era. However, they're taking advantage of the social media stream, and they're playing off the edginess there, pushing the story, selling the story, then it makes you, you're buying into it, you're getting hooked through social media, so then you tune in to watch what's going to happen.
Exactly. And, and in social media, you don't have to wait till the next week. I mean, that can happen. You can clap back instantaneously. They can just keep going at each other. And I mean, as a fan, you're just sitting there watching and it's like, okay, who's gonna say what next? I mean, it's good stuff.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it a lot, the way they're going at it there. And, a couple other things that I've enjoyed recently was, I like the Sonya Blade look out of Ronda Rousey.
I like that too.
I would love to see that, carried into Mania. That would be a great permanent look for her.
I think she's gonna give us something different at Mania though.
Yeah, probably. When she came out in that, it was like, that looks good. It's like, I like that look. But one of the other things I wanted to point out before we get, start wrapping up this episode on Ronda, she's undefeated.
Yep.
I don't know if anyone's ever, taken the time to look at that we're a year in and Ronda's undefeated. She's going into Mania. She debuted at Mania last year. She hasn't lost. And that's not being said leading into this giant matchup, the biggest matchup so far in women's wrestling history. And she's the undefeated champion walking into this match.
So if she loses, it's going to be, it's going to be big. No matter who wins it, it's going to be big.
Mm-hmm.
And I just hope that, all the kayfabe, pun intended, and stuff aside, putting the kayfabe, turning all that stuff off, that everyone appreciates what we're seeing with, in the 34 prior years of WrestleMania, there's never been a women's match to go on last. Mm-hmm. And for this to be happening in 2019 is phenomenal. So I just hope that, and I know that these women, all the women, appreciate the history that's going to be made at WrestleMania 35.
So let's, kind of start wrapping this up. If you're watching this and you haven't seen our Becky Lynch episode, please watch that as well. That'll help fill in a lot of the stuff that you may feel we skipped over in this one in terms of the building of the main event match. But so let's shoot some quick questions out. Ronda Rousey's about a year into her wrestling career, professional wrestling career. Actually more if you go back to her debut at the Royal Rumble. She's more than a year in. How would you rate her first year?
I think she's had a phenomenal first year. I think she's exceeded expectations. She's shown that she can work. She's gotten better and better as the year has gone on. She's gotten better on the mic. She's gotten better in the ring. I think WWE got their money's worth and then some.
Yeah, absolutely. She started off good.
Mm-hmm.
And has continued to get better, like you said, and which is to start off the way she did. It's already like, okay, she naturally has this in-ring ability. It's just good. She's going to be a great in-ring performer. And then she's continued to build, and she's been in matches that have stolen the show. Initially she was given a hard time initially about her mic skills. A lot of people, kind of made comments about the mic skills, but I really didn't think anything of her initial appearance with the mic skills because here's why. So we mentioned her losses in UFC, and that hit her hard. Mm-hmm. She struggled. She kind of had, went into a depression over that, those losses. And so now you're talking about someone who dealing with that depression, and now she's walking out in front of 20,000 people welcoming her, chanting her name. Mm-hmm. It's obviously you can get emotional. It can be overwhelming.
Without doubt.
And so that's what I feel pulled away from that initial, trying to talk on the mic. But ever since then, she's gotten better and better. And, some people call out like, she got rattled by the crowd, over the Becky Lynch thing. Like, you can see that episode with Truth or Consequences where, Vince Russo and Matt Coon kind of go at each other on this, where Matt Coon's blaming her. That, she should know how to handle that. Look how Daniel Bryan handled the crowd. And, Vince Russo's pointing out, she's new to this. Daniel Bryan's a seasoned professional, trained by Shawn Michaels. He knows how to handle himself.
Right.
And, under her defense, most people, their first year in the business is in an indie level or an NXT.
Right.
You're not on that type of platform being rattled by that size of a crowd. And yeah, maybe they rattled her initially to where she was struggling to get her point across. Mm-hmm. But we also got to keep in mind that she was being restricted to smile, come out and smile. Mm-hmm. So then they hurried up and they cue Bayley. They get Bayley out there. She beats Bayley pretty quick. Mm-hmm. Becky comes out, and then Ronda just lays into the "I'll rip your arm off." Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, so maybe she got rattled early, but she recovered fine. Yeah. By the end of that segment, she probably laid down the best promo she had to that day.
Yeah. To hold her to the standard of a veteran like Daniel Bryan, who's wrestled literally all over the world, like you said, trained with Shawn Michaels, and I mean, he's wrestled everywhere. He's worked with people like William Regal and other people. I mean, so to hold her to that standard, it's not a fair comparison.
Right. Yeah, and so I agree. I think her first year has exceeded expectations. I think she has completely delivered across the board. It's been a phenomenal year. So let's put the predictions out there now. Who wins?
Becky.
I'm going to say Becky wins as well. I think Becky's popularity, we talked about it last week. She's at that Austin level to where, it just feels like this is her moment to take the title on the grandest stage. My guess is she does it over Charlotte because it's a triple threat match. Somehow Ronda is down, out, whatever. Becky beats Charlotte, does not beat Ronda.
I think Becky beats Ronda, and it sets up the rematch at SummerSlam.
See, and that's why I don't think she beats Ronda, because it gives Ronda a reason to go back at her.
Touche.
Because if she beats Charlotte, Ronda points out, you never beat me. You never took the title from me.
Touche.
Now, what I would love to see is WWE throw us a curveball. Have Ronda Rousey win it. Keep this up of, if this is real, I would beat you all. And have her snap the armbar on Becky. Mm-hmm. Have the ref panic like he doesn't know what's going on. Have Becky tap. The ref look confused, but call for the bell because she's tapping.
Mm-hmm.
And then have like officials coming out like you saw at the end of Survivor Series 97
mm-hmm.
of like what the hell's going on, and have like the announcer sound confused, and then make it where Ronda Rousey's not on TV for a while, and just feed stuff to the dirt sheets that she gets suspended because she wasn't supposed to win that match. And then Becky wins the vacated title in a tournament rematch, just one-on-one with Charlotte, whatever you will. Ronda comes back,
mm-hmm.
champion versus champion against Becky. The person who never lost the belt against the winner of the vacated title. That's how I would book it.
I think you should be a booker.
So, those are our thoughts. So, what do you think? Who do you think is going to win? How do you think they should do it? Let us know on social media. Check out the Becky Lynch episode as well. And
we might have to work a Charlotte one in here. We got to give her props. We got to give the queen her props.
So yeah, definitely looking forward to this match, and we'll see you soon.